everyone, it's Stacey. In today's video I'm going to show you how to make these really super quick and easy fabric book covers. I think you're really going to love them. I can imagine you making them for gifts. You know, when you're in the fabric shop and you see a fabric and you're like, I know someone who'd love that, but you have no idea what project to make them. This is your project. But before we get started, we just need to do our Sew Sampler giveaway, and I've got all the entries in here. Thank you everyone that entered. And I'm just going to pick someone's name out randomly. And the winner is Brianna Henkel. So thank you so much, Brianna. Please send me an email and I'll pop the box in the post to you. So now let's make our fabric book cover. To make the fabric book cover, I've used a composition book which you can get from all sort of general retailers in America. However, you might be using a different book, or you might be in a different country and not be able to get these. So all I did was measure the book. I measured it from the edge all the way around into the other edge, and I added on an inch, and then I measured it from the top to the bottom, and then I added on an inch. But for an American composition book, we need to cut 3 pieces of fabric, or rather 2 pieces of fabric, one for the outer, one for the lining, and a piece of batting, all at the same size of 11 inches by 16 inches. So they're all cut to the same size. And then we need to cut 2 pieces of fabric, and this is for the inner sleeve, and these are cut at 11 inches by 7 inches. But if you've done your own measurements, just remember to add on an inch on the side and at the top. Before we get started, I just wanted to show you one more option for our fabric book cover. You don't have to just use one piece of plain fabric. You might want to do a quilted look, and you could use any shape pieces you'd like and sew them together so they're big enough. What I've done here is I've taken 2.5 inch strips, I've sewn them together, I've pressed all the seams one way. I have made it a little bit bigger than 11 inches by 16 inches. Then I've taken a piece of batting and I've quilted it. And now what I'll do is I'll cut that down to 11 inches by 16 inches, and I'll do the same process that we're about to do with the plain fabric. So the first thing we need to do is take our inside sleeves, and we're going to face them right sides down, so the wrong side's facing me. And along the longer edge, we're just going to fold that over about 1/4 inch, and I'm just going to go by eye. You might want to measure it. It doesn't really matter, it doesn't have to be perfect. And we're just going to iron that down 1/4 inch. And then what we're going to do is fold it over one more time, about 1/4 inch, and press. And then we'll repeat that for the second piece. Now we're just going to sew both pieces down. So taking one of the seams where I've just pressed it, I'm just going to fold it back down, make sure it's sitting how I want it to sit, and I will just pop a pin in or two just to make sure it's sitting how I want it to sit. And then I'm just going to sew along that edge so that it's sitting nicely. I'm going to use my 1/4 inch foot, and apparently I did press it much bigger than 1/4 inch, so that's going to work perfectly for me. But just sew your seam to whatever makes the most sense. My stitches are going to be just on the inside of the folded over edge here, and I'm going to be stitching at stitch length 2.5. I've got my regular Gutermann thread, and I'm just going to stitch. I'm not going to worry about a back stitch. I'm just going to cut the thread while I'm here at the bottom and at the top, and then I'm going to repeat that for the other sleeve. So now we're just going to pin all our fabrics together and sew them. So we've got our batting first, then we've got the fabric that we want to be our cover, and we're going to pop that on top with the right sides facing up, and we're going to line up all those edges. And now if you'd sewn some pieces together, or even just chose to quilt this would be how you'd have it. You'd have the right side facing you with the batting underneath. Then we're going to take our sleeves, and we want them with the right sides facing down, and the side that we sewed on is in the center. So the outer edge is the raw edge, and again we'll line up all those edges, and we'll take the second sleeve and we'll do exactly the same. We want the right side facing down with the seam we just sewed on the center, lining up all those edges. And then we're going to take our lining fabric and we're going to pop that on top with the right side facing down. So you can see this is the right side of the fabric facing down. And then what we're going to do is we're just going to pin that in place. And I like to just start in the corners. And as you're doing that, you can just check that it's all nicely lined up. And that's looking really good. And then we can just come around and just pop a few extra in. So now what we're going to do is sew right around the edges, but we do need to leave an opening so we can turn it right sides out. Now, if you're going to remember to do that, then just go ahead and sew it. But if you're going to forget, you can just take a chalk pencil or whatever you've got on hand and just leave a mark where you're going to start, or sorry, finish, and where you'll start. So I'm going to start right before that sleeve there, but I will finish a bit before it. And that's about 4 to 5 inches. So now let's sew it. So I've still got my 1/4 inch foot on, and I'm going to start where I showed you I just did the marker. I will do a back stitch because it can get a little bit stretched when we're turning it right sides out. When I'm coming up to my corners, I'm just going to do my best guess at 1/4 inch, and that was spot on. So coming up to that corner again, sorry, remembering to lift your foot up, turn, pop your foot back down, and my needle stayed down during that whole process to keep it all in place. Carrying on. Now I'm just coming up to my marker, so I'll just sew right up to that, and then I will do a back stitch. I'm going to cut those threads, and I'm just going to cut them where we started. So just taking the pins out. And then what we're going to do is just trim these corners so they're not so bulky. So I'm just going to come along and trim it close to the stitches, just being careful not to cut them on either side, which gets rid of a lot of bulk. And I'll do that on all 4 corners. Okay, and now we're going to find our opening, and we want to go in between the outer fabric and the lining and pull that through. Can be a bit fiddly. Okay, so now once it's looking like this, we're going to take these sleeves and we're going to flip them over to the back, so they're now sitting on the lining on both sides. And then I'm just going to take my point turner, or you might want to use a chopstick or whatever you've got, and I'm just going to come into those corners and just push them out so they're sitting really nicely. The book is rounded, so I'm not going to push them out too hard, just so they're a little bit rounded. Okay, and then we're just going to get it sitting really nicely, and we're going to give it a quick press. So now let's press it. Now the most important thing is to make sure that our opening is sitting really nicely, and here I've got my sleeve as well, so I need to make sure they're tucked in nicely, lined up, so it's all sitting how I want it to sit. And you might want to check it on the inside and on the outside before you press it. So that's looking pretty good to me. I'm just going to give it a press. And what I might do is just flip that over and make sure I'm still happy with how it's sitting on the inside. Again, I'll just give that a press. And now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to roll out all these edges so they're sitting really nice and flat. We don't want them kind of stuck in there creating like a crease, which means it's not going to sit perfectly. So let's roll them out really nicely. And I find this step here really makes the difference of getting it to sit and look really nice and tidy. And I'm going to go around all 4 edges and do that. And you could check it on the inside and on the outside. Okay, and once you're happy with it, why don't we give it one press over the whole piece so it's sitting nice and flat. And now we're going to close up that opening. So now I'm just going to sew the opening shut, and I'm just going to pop a few pins in so I know where to start and finish, and to make sure it's all lined up nicely. So my opening is here just before the end of the sleeve, and it finishes before the sleeve here. So I'll just pop a few pins in, like I said, so I know where to start sewing and I know where to finish, as well as making sure these edges are lined up nicely. Okay, let's finish it off. So I'm going to start stitching before my opening, and I know where that is because I've got my pin right there. And I'm not going to be stitching at 1/4 of an inch. I just want to come in a bit because I want to be able to catch all the inside pieces to close it up nicely. I guess it's about 1/8 of an inch. And I'll pop my foot down. I will do a back stitch. Coming right up past that pin. And then I'll do a back stitch again. Cut my threads. Okay, let's pop our book into our sleeve. So we'll just open up our sleeve, take our book, take the front cover, pop it in the front sleeve there, flip to the back and take the back cover and fold it. Oh, can be a bit fiddly, and pop it in that back sleeve, and there we have it, our fabric book cover. Isn't that cute? So I hope you enjoyed today's tutorial. Please leave a comment below letting me know who you'd like to make one for. And just one note, if you are using directional fabric, just keep an eye on it, that it is all sitting up the right way, and it is nicer to sew it closed at the bottom. You can find all the cutting instructions in the link in the description below. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next week. Thank you for watching my videos. If you're enjoying them, please like, subscribe and leave a comment.